Hello, this is Timdogg. You may know me from such podcasts as the Click Nation podcast and the Cold Slither podcast. And I'd like to welcome you to the first ever episode of Timdogg's Comic Book Chronicles. For anyone who's ever listened to the Click Nation podcast or the Cold Slither podcast, you may know that I'm a pretty big fan of comic books. And if you follow me on Twitter at Timdogg98, then you probably have seen me tweeted numerous times about different comic book storylines or characters or just whatever comes to mind whenever I see someone tweet anything regarding comic books. And the idea came to me that, since I have these different outlets to express myself, why not start my own little series concerning comic books? So that's where this Timdogg's Comic Book Chronicles idea came from. Each new episode of the Timdogg Comic Book Chronicles, I'll pick a topic and basically discuss it and give some history on how this storyline or series from a comic book originated and my opinions on how I feel about said story. And this week's episode, I decided since the Avengers is pretty big news, since it's breaking all the box office records at the movie theaters, what better opportunity than to discuss the current storyline going on in the Marvel comic books of Avengers versus X-Men. And for those of you not in the know, the Avengers vs. X-Men series is a 12-part story taking place, crossing over into different Avengers and X-Men comic books, while also taking place in a standalone series, Avengers vs. X-Men, and another series called A vs. X. And A vs. X deals with the different battles going on between characters on the Avengers and the X-Men. It's basically a big fight book. I won't get too much into that because, like I said, it's just involving this Avenger versus this X-Men, and supposedly there will be a winner in each battle. Not anything I really care about. But back to Avengers versus X-Men, the series, it deals with the Phoenix Force coming back from outer space, coming to Earth, and trying to supposedly inhabitate the body of Hope Summers, who was the first mutant born after a series called House of M, where the Scarlet Witch uttered 3 magical words, "No more mutants," which ended up taking away the mutant powers of many of the mutants in the Marvel Universe, and ended up dropping their number to somewhere around 200 mutants left in the world. Now, you may say that still is a pretty large number, but you have to remember there were so many mutants running around in the Marvel Universe that their numbers were in the thousands. But now they went from thousands to 100, and now mutants are basically an endangered species. So this has been going on for the last 5 years or so, where if any mutant that still had their powers happened to be killed, then that's just one less mutant in the world, and that's the reason the X-Men consider mutants a dangerous species. They can't afford to lose any more of their race. And with that came Cyclops becoming more of a... He's been known to be a softie, I guess is the nice way to say it. A lot of people think Cyclops doesn't have the backbone to be a cool character in the Marvel Universe. They don't look at him as being as cool as Wolverine or Sabretooth or Gambit, guys that have a little mean streak in them. But what's actually taking place is Cyclops seeing the mutant numbers dwindling down to be so few of them left remaining. He's actually morphed more into a Magneto type role, being more militaristic and having a more hard stance on issues and not afraid to piss anyone off or rub anyone the wrong way. He's going to do whatever it takes for him to secure the safety of the mutant race. But anyway, back to the Phoenix Force. The Phoenix Force is coming to Earth and it wants to inhabitate Hope Summers. And Hope, like I said, was the first mutant born after the House of M storyline. And since Hope was such an important character, since she was the first mutant born after the House of M, the X-Men wanted to, rush off and find her and keep her safe. And long story short, the mutant Cable, who just happens to be the son of Cyclops, took Hope into the future to raise her. And this also was a nice device to age Hope from a baby to a full-grown teenager by the time Cable and Hope came back from the future. And even though Cerebra detected that Hope was a mutant, we still never knew what her powers were until a storyline which the name of it escapes me at the moment. Let's see, there was the Messiah Complex. I can't think of it right at the moment. I'll have to bring up the nice Wikipedia article to figure it out. But anyway, Hope's powers are that she seems to be able to mimic any powers of any mutant that she comes in the general vicinity of. So if she was standing around, let's say, Colossus, she'd be able to turn her skin to metal and become super strong. Or if she's around Cyclops, she could shoot optic blasts. So that's her Hope's mutant powers. So the Phoenix Force is on its way to Earth. The Avengers get notified that this powerful force is coming to Earth. And the Phoenix has a history of being a destructive force because it's wiped out total galaxies. And the Avengers are afraid that the same thing is going to happen to Earth. So they want to, protect the Earth. And since they know that the Phoenix is coming for Hope, they decide we need to go to Utopia, which is the X-Men's base of operations right now. And Utopia is off the coast of San Francisco. The Avengers decide to go to Utopia and ask the X-Men to give Hope over to them so they can put her in protective custody, so to speak. Cyclops doesn't agree with this. He doesn't see the Phoenix as this destructive force coming to obliterate the Earth. Cyclops sees the Phoenix Force as the salvation for mutant kind. His thought process is the Phoenix Force will come and spark a new generation of new mutants. So that's where Cyclops and Captain America, the leader of the Avengers, differ. So once the Captain America shows up on Utopia and asks Cyclops to hand over Hope Summers, Cyclops responds by shooting an optic blast at Captain America. And that starts a big fight between the Avengers and the X-Men, which, of course, comic books have to have all the superhero teams originally fight each other in the beginning and then work together to stop whatever bad guy they are encountering. So this is a part of the show where I start to air my disagreement with Mr. Brian Michael Bendis, who is the head writer over a couple of the Marvel Avengers comic books. He's been around for a good number of years now. I believe he came on right around the Avengers Disassembled storyline, and that's led off where the Scarlet Witch went crazy and killed a bunch of Avengers. So since that time, he has revolutionized the Avengers franchise. He's notably added Wolverine and Spider-Man to the Avengers because he always saw the Avengers as being Marvel's premier superhero team. So if they're going to be the premier superhero team, they also need to include the highest profile characters that are in the Marvel Universe. And those two people happen to be Spider-Man and Wolverine. A lot of people look at this as not that big of a deal. I myself, however, have a big issue with it. Just because ever since I started collecting comic books in the early 90s, the very first issues I remember getting were X-Men #1 and X-Men #1 and X-Force #1. X-Men drawn by Jim Lee, X-Force by Rob Liefeld. So in my head, I always see the X-Men as the #1 team franchise in the Marvel Universe. I never considered the Avengers anything more than, Earth's Mightiest Heroes, which was, nice little tagline, but I've always, and I always am and always will be an X-Men fan. So I don't want to see Wolverine in the Avengers. He's an X-Man. He's a mutant. And Spider-Man, he's always been known to be a loner, or someone that doesn't work well on teams. So why all of a sudden is he going to join the Avengers? Half of New York sees Spider-Man as a menace anyway, thanks to J. Jonah Jameson. So but just besides Spider-Man and Wolverine, Bendis has also added Storm and Thing and Daredevil to the Avengers line. And it's like, why would Storm even join the Avengers? Just because her husband, Black Panther, is an Avenger doesn't mean she needs to be one. Keep my mutants separate from my Avengers. I know Beast has been an Avenger before, and he's an Avenger now, but for some reason I just see the Beast as a different case altogether. So that about summarizes what's going on with Avengers versus X-Men at the moment. The X-Men and Avengers have fought on Utopia. Wolverine tried to kill Hope because he also sees the Phoenix as this destructive force, and he wants to do the honorable thing, even if it's not really honorable to kill a teenage girl who hasn't really done anything evil yet. So Wolverine tried to kill Hope, but she ended up escaping, and she's on the run now. The Avengers and the X-Men are trying to track her. And so far, I think they're on part 6 of the story, which would be the first act, as they've called it. And Marvel has already released a teaser for the second act, which is called No More Avengers. And this is just a play on words of the No More Mutants that Scarlet Witch uttered, which ended up stealing the powers from thousands of mutants across the world. So, No More Avengers. Would Marvel really be ballsy enough to have the X-Men come out on top over their superhero team that's breaking all these records at the box office? Something tells me, nah, they're not going to do all that. The Avengers are the good guys. The X-Men have to be looked at as the bad guys. And we're just going to have to wait and see how these next 6 parts of the Avengers vs. X-Men unfolds. Because right now, Captain America ended up kicking Wolverine out of a Quinjet as the Avengers were heading back from Utopia back to, I'm assuming, New York City, because Captain America disagreed with Wolverine trying to use deadly force against Hope. So he wanted to take that, what he saw as a wild card, out of the equation. So as the Quinjet was flying over the ocean, they ended up ejecting Wolverine out of it. So now Wolverine gets to play Lone Ranger as he tries to make his way back to land. And then now we also will see if he ends up going back onto the X-Men side. And that's something else I didn't really enjoy. They want to put, like I said, they put Wolverine on the Avengers team, and he actually is turning his back on his fellow mutants. It's just, I blame Bendis for everything. Him and Jeff Loeb and Edward Norton, enemies number 1, 2, and 3 in no particular order. And if anyone has listened to the previous episodes of the Click Nation podcast, you'll know why. But I think that about wraps it up for this first episode of the Timdogg's Comic Book Chronicles. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you have any feedback you'd like to send regarding the show or any topics you'd like to hear me discuss in future episodes, make sure to send an email to theclicknation@gmail.com, and make sure to follow Click Nation on Twitter @theclicknation, the Code Slither Podcast on Twitter @Code Slither Podcast, and if you want to follow me on Twitter, I am @TimDogg98. And, of course, also go to the websites, codeslitherpodcast.com and theclicknation.com. Once again, I'm Timdogg, and thanks for listening to the first ever episode of Timdogg's Comic Book Chronicles. Peace!